The security footage flickered across 12 screens simultaneously in the Galactic Council's emergency chamber. Ambassador Quillen from the Tharian species watched the same scene for the 5th time that morning, and his three-chambered heart still raced with disbelief. The video showed a human cargo freighter. Designation: Prairie Wind. Drifting through the outer colony's trade route when 6 Krillian raider ships appeared on intercept vectors. Standard protocol dictated immediate surrender. Cargo vessels carried no weapons, no shields, no means of defense against military-grade pirates. The Prairie Wind should have surrendered within minutes. Instead, the human ship accelerated directly toward the largest raider vessel. Quillen zoomed in on the footage. 3 humans appeared in the cargo bay, a maintenance worker named Patterson, a cook called Rodriguez, and a freight handler who went by Wilson. None wore military uniforms, none carried standard weapons. Patterson held what appeared to be a plasma torch typically used for hull repairs. Rodriguez wielded a kitchen knife and some kind of pressurized canister. Wilson had fashioned a crude club from a cargo restraint bar. The raiders breached the hull 7 minutes into the engagement. 12 Krillian warriors poured through the opening, each standing 2.5 meters tall, armed with pulse rifles and combat armor. The 3 humans waited behind a makeshift barricade of shipping containers. Quillen watched Patterson trigger something. The plasma torch suddenly flared with intense heat, melting the deck plating beneath the first wave of raiders. 4 Krillians fell through the weakened floor into the lower cargo hold. Rodriguez moved next. The canister in his hands turned out to be a fire suppression system, modified somehow. He sprayed it directly into the faces of 3 more raiders. The chemical foam wasn't designed as a weapon, but it blinded the Krillians long enough for Wilson to strike with his improvised club. The freight handler moved with surprising speed, targeting joints in the raider armor with precision that suggested either luck or training. The remaining 5 Krillians regrouped and returned fire. Plasma bolts tore through the cargo bay. One shot hit Patterson in the shoulder, spinning him around. He grunted, switched the torch to his other hand, and kept fighting. Rodriguez took a graze to his leg but continued spraying foam while using containers for cover. Wilson flanked the raiders using maintenance crawlways too small for the larger aliens. 15 minutes after the breach, all 12 Krillian warriors lay unconscious or incapacitated. The 3 humans secured them with cargo netting and contacted the nearest patrol station. When asked about their condition, Patterson reported his injury as not too bad, despite medical scans later showing a degree burn that penetrated to the bone. Rodriguez needed 17 stitches, but refused evacuation. Wilson complained only about a broken finger. Quillen paused the footage and turned to face the assembled council members. Representatives from 47 species filled the chamber, their expressions ranging from confusion to outright alarm. The Virin delegate, an insectoid species known for their military prowess, spoke first. "This cannot be representative of human capability. These must be trained operatives disguised as civilians." His translator rendered the clicking sounds into standard galactic. Quillen shook his head. "We investigated that possibility. All 3 humans have verified civilian backgrounds. Patterson worked in maintenance for 6 years. Rodriguez trained as a chef on Earth before joining the merchant fleet. Wilson has been hauling cargo for 8 years. None have military service records." "Then explain how they survived," the Virin delegate insisted. "Krillian raiders are trained warriors. They have conducted successful boarding actions against Council security forces. How did 3 untrained humans defeat 12 professional soldiers?" "That's not the concerning part." Quillen pulled up a data screen. "This incident occurred 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've documented 17 similar encounters. In each case, human civilians, traders, miners, colonists, even children, have repelled attacks, survived disasters, or accomplished feats that should be impossible for untrained individuals." The chamber erupted in dozens of simultaneous conversations. Quillen raised his voice above the din. "The humans claim these are ordinary citizens with basic survival instincts. They insist no special training is involved. They maintain that any human would respond similarly in crisis situations." A heavy silence fell over the assembly. The implications were staggering. If human civilians possessed combat capabilities that exceeded trained galactic soldiers, what did that suggest? About human military forces. Perhaps we should speak directly to human military representatives, suggested the Eldari counselor, her crystalline features refracting the chamber lights. We need answers about their true capabilities. Quillen manipulated his console. I've already extended an invitation. Human Ambassador Roberts is bringing a military liaison. He checked the time display. They should arrive within the hour. What do we know about human military structure? Asked the Krillian ambassador, his scaled face showing unusual concern. His species had lost ships to these human civilians, and the political ramifications were becoming serious. Very little, Quillen admitted. Humans have been reluctant to discuss their defense forces. They claim it's a matter of cultural privacy. Our intelligence suggests they maintain something they call special operations units, but details are classified even within human government circles. The Virin delegate leaned forward. Special operations, that suggests elite forces, warriors beyond their standard military. Possibly, Quillen pulled up another file. I found references in human data streams to organizations with designations like Rangers, Special Warfare, and something called Tier 1 operators. The information is fragmentary at best. How many of these elite soldiers do humans possess? The Eldari counselor asked. Quillen hesitated before answering. The number he'd found seemed impossible, yet the data appeared authentic. Best estimates suggest these specialized units represent less than 1% of Earth's total military forces. The chamber fell silent again. Everyone present understood the implication. If less than 1% were considered elite, that meant 99% were classified as something else, presumably regular forces, and if regular forces were anything like the civilians they'd observed. We need those answers, the Krillian ambassador stated flatly. The Council must understand what humanity brings to galactic space. Are they a threat or an ally? We cannot make informed decisions without data. Quillen glanced at the chronometer. 30 minutes until the human delegation arrived. 30 minutes to prepare questions for representatives of a species that seemed to redefine every assumption about combat capability, survival instincts, and the nature of civilization itself. Outside the chamber, the prairie wind continued its delivery route. Patterson returned to maintenance work with his arm in a healing wrap. Rodriguez prepared meals for the crew. Wilson loaded cargo containers. None of them considered their actions particularly noteworthy. They'd done what needed doing, nothing more. That attitude, Quillen was beginning to realize, might be the most terrifying thing about humans. They didn't see themselves as exceptional. They simply acted, adapted, and survived. And if that was normal for them, what did exceptional look like? The question haunted him as he prepared to meet Earth's military representatives. Colonel Hayes stepped off the shuttle with the casual confidence of someone who'd made this trip 1,000 times before. She wore a simple uniform with minimal decorations, carried no visible weapons, and looked entirely unremarkable by human standards. Quillen studied her as she approached the observation window where the delegation waited. She was shorter than average for her species, perhaps 60 years old, with gray streaking through her dark hair. Nothing about her appearance suggested enhanced capabilities or specialized training. Ambassador Quillen, she extended her hand in the human greeting gesture. I understand you have questions about Earth's military structure. Quillen accepted the handshake, noting the firmness of her grip. We do. Your civilian population has demonstrated capabilities that exceed our military expectations. The Council needs to understand what your trained forces are capable of. Hayes nodded. I can arrange observations of basic training facilities. You'll see how we prepare our soldiers. She gestured toward a waiting transport. Shall we begin? The delegation followed her to Earth's orbital training station. The facility sprawled across 3 connected modules, each dedicated to different aspects of military preparation. Hayes led them to an observation deck overlooking a massive gymnasium where dozens of human recruits practiced various exercises. "These are new candidates," Hayes explained. "They've been in training for 6 weeks. By our standards, they're still learning fundamentals." Quillen watched a group of humans climbing a vertical wall using only small handholds. The climb reached 15 meters. Most galactic species would use safety equipment for such heights. The humans wore none. One recruit lost his grip and fell. He hit the padded floor, rolled to absorb impact, and immediately returned to the wall to try again. "Is injury not a concern?" asked the VRIN delegate. "Of course it is," Hayes replied. "But fear of injury cannot prevent training. Our soldiers need to understand their physical limits. Falling from 15 meters in controlled conditions teaches them how to fall safely in combat." The Eldari counselor pointed to another group running on treadmills. Their pace seemed excessive. "How long do they maintain that speed?" "That's a standard endurance test." Hayes checked her data pad. "They'll run for 90 minutes at that pace, then transition to sprint intervals." 90 minutes. The VRIN delegate's mandibles clicked in disbelief. "Our soldiers train for 30-minute maximum efforts." Hayes smiled slightly. "Different species, different standards. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, were built for sustained effort over long periods." The observation continued for another hour. The delegation watched recruits practice hand-to-hand combat, weapons handling, tactical movement, and emergency medical procedures. Every exercise pushed the humans to their limits. Several sustained injuries, a broken finger here, a sprained ankle there, but continued training after basic treatment. "This seems excessive," the Krillian ambassador commented. "Why train to the point of injury?" "Because combat is excessive," Hayes replied simply. "Our enemies won't stop because we're tired or hurt. Our soldiers need to function effectively under the worst possible conditions. Training in comfort produces soldiers who fail in crisis." She led them to another section where recruits practiced in environmental chambers. One group trained in extreme cold, their breath visible in the freezing air. Another group worked in desert heat. A third group operated in a chamber filled with smoke and strobe lights designed to disorient. "We expose them to every environment they might encounter," Hayes explained. "Temperature extremes, low oxygen, sensory deprivation, sleep deprivation. We need to know how they'll respond before we send them into real situations." The VRIN delegate stopped at a window overlooking a combat simulation. Human recruits faced holographic opponents in an urban warfare scenario. The aliens were larger and better armed. Yet the humans used cover, coordination, and tactical creativity to neutralize their opponents. "These are recruits," he said slowly, "not fully trained soldiers." "Correct," Hayes confirmed. "They've completed basic training but haven't specialized yet. These are standard infantry candidates." "Standard," the word hung in the air like a challenge. Hayes turned to face the delegation. "I know what you're thinking. You've seen what human civilians can do. You've watched our recruits train. Now you want to know about our elite forces, the Special Operations units." Quillen nodded. "That's exactly what we want to know." "I can't show you that," Hayes said flatly. "Special Operations personnel don't participate in demonstrations. Their methods and capabilities are classified. What I can tell you is this. Those units recruit from regular forces. Soldiers volunteer after years of standard military service. The selection process eliminates 70 to 80% of candidates. Those who succeed undergo additional training that makes this," she gestured at the recruits around them, "look like basic exercise." "Why the secrecy?" asked the Eldari counselor. "Because revelation of capabilities eliminates tactical advantage," Hayes replied. "If an enemy knows what we can do, they develop countermeasures. Surprise is a weapon we prefer to keep sharp." An alarm interrupted the discussion. Red lights flashed throughout the facility. Hayes pulled out her communicator and listened intently. Her expression remained neutral, but Quillen noticed her shoulders tense slightly. "We have a situation," she announced. Vorash swarm is attacking a colony in the outer rim, civilian population of 30,000. Local defenses are being overwhelmed. How far? Quillen demanded. 7 light years. Hayes checked her display. Too far for Council rapid response. Your closest forces are 12 hours away. The Krillian ambassador growled. Then those colonists are lost. Nothing can reach them in time. Hayes made a brief call on her communicator. The conversation lasted less than 10 seconds. She turned back to the delegation. Help is on the way. What kind of help? Quillen asked, though part of him already knew the answer. The kind you've been asking about, Hayes replied calmly. Shadow Team is deploying. Estimated arrival is 4 hours. 4 hours, the Virin delegate's voice rose. That's impossible. No ship can cross 7 light years in 4 hours. Hayes didn't argue. She simply walked toward the command. Center, come with me. You wanted to see what human elite forces can do. You're about to get your demonstration. The delegation followed, their earlier questions suddenly forgotten. They were about to witness something unprecedented. Hayes had been showing them regular forces, standard training, baseline capabilities. Now they would see what humans created when they pushed beyond baseline. Quillen felt his heart racing again. The same sensation he'd experienced watching civilian humans defeat trained warriors. Except this time, he knew what was coming wouldn't be civilians, wouldn't be recruits, wouldn't be anything the galaxy had seen before. Shadow Team was coming, and the Vorash swarm had no idea what was about to happen. The operations center buzzed with controlled chaos. Council military coordinators tracked the Vorash swarm assault across multiple screens, while automated systems calculated response times and casualty projections. The numbers painted a grim picture. 30,000 colonists faced extinction within 6 hours if no help arrived. Quillen positioned himself at a strategic display showing the entire sector. The colony appeared as a blue dot surrounded by red icons representing Vorash forces. Council ships glowed yellow in various positions, all too distant to matter. He kept checking the chronometer. 3 hours and 47 minutes since Hayes made her call, 13 minutes until the humans claimed they would arrive. This is pointless, the Krillian ambassador muttered. No force can travel that distance in under 4 hours. The humans are either lying or deluded. Hayes stood nearby, monitoring something on her personal data pad. She didn't respond to the accusation. Her fingers moved across the screen in quick practice gestures. Quillen noticed she'd made several brief communications during the past hour, each lasting only seconds. Whatever was happening, she was coordinating something. 3 minutes, she announced suddenly. The Virin delegate checked the main display. I see nothing. No ships approaching the colony, no energy signatures, no faster-than-light disruptions. You won't, Hayes replied. Shadow Team doesn't announce their arrival. The chronometer ticked down. Quillen found himself holding his breath, all 3 of his hearts beating in sync. The other delegates leaned closer to their screens. Even the Krillian ambassador had stopped complaining and simply watched. At exactly 4 hours, a single contact appeared on the tactical display. The ship emerged from faster-than-light travel at the colony's orbital edge. It was small by galactic standards, perhaps frigate class. The hull showed visible modifications and battle damage that suggested years of hard use. That's Shadow Team, Hayes confirmed. 12 operators, standard special operations unit size. 12, the Eldari counselor's voice carried disbelief. 12 soldiers against a Vorash swarm assault. The human ship didn't waste time with communications. It accelerated toward the planet, moving faster than should be possible for a vessel that size. Vorash fighters intercepted, 5 of them converging on the single human ship. Instead of evading, the ship launched 12 small pods directly at the planet and continued its attack run against the Vorash fighters. Those pods contain your soldiers, Quillen stated, watching them streak toward atmosphere. Yes, Hayes tracked their descent on her data pad. They're using kinetic insertion. It's faster than conventional landing craft. Kinetic insertion. The VRIN delegate processed the term. You mean they're falling? Those pods are entering atmosphere at combat speeds. 3 Vorash fighters broke off from attacking the ship and moved to intercept the pods. The small human projectiles should have been easy targets, but each pod possessed limited maneuvering capability. They didn't evade the Vorash, they accelerated toward them. Quillen watched in shock as pods deliberately collided with fighter craft. The impacts destroyed the Vorash vessels. The pods continued their descent, seemingly undamaged. Did they just use themselves as weapons? The Krillian ambassador demanded. The pods are designed to survive high-velocity impacts, Hayes explained. Taking out enemy fighters during insertion serves multiple purposes, eliminates air threats, creates confusion, and establishes dominance before boots touch ground. The 12 pods entered the final phase of descent. They fell directly toward the heaviest Vorash concentration. The swarm had established a command cluster in the colony's central district, coordinating the assault from a fortified position. Standard military doctrine suggested landing away from such concentrations to avoid being overwhelmed. The humans aimed straight for it. Impact came like artillery fire. Pods struck the ground at speeds that should have liquefied organic matter. The hardened shells absorbed the kinetic energy and split open. 12 armored figures emerged, each carrying enough weaponry to outfit a normal squad. They didn't establish perimeter defenses. They didn't call for support. They simply opened fire and started moving forward. Quillen switched to ground-level surveillance feeds. The visual made his heart skip. Vorash warriors stood 3 meters tall with natural armor plating that could deflect standard plasma fire. They were born killers, evolved for combat. They'd broken council battle lines dozens of times. 12 humans in powered armor walked through them like they weren't there. The human-designated Reaper held the eastern flank alone. 40 Vorash warriors converged on his position. His weapon, some kind of accelerated projectile system, fired in controlled bursts. Each burst dropped a Vorash. He moved constantly, using rubble and destroyed vehicles for cover, never staying still long enough for return fire to find him. When his primary weapon ran dry, he switched to a secondary. When that emptied, he used some kind of blade weapon that generated an energy field. Vorash that came within reach fell in pieces. On the western approach, an operator called Nomad had penetrated the Vorash command structure. Surveillance showed him moving through their defensive positions like a ghost. He appeared behind guards, eliminated them silently, and vanished before others noticed. Within 10 minutes, he'd killed half the Vorash leadership. The swarm's coordination began deteriorating immediately. The remaining operators worked in pairs or trios, each team carving through Vorash positions with brutal efficiency. They communicated in brief phrases: moving, contact, clear, no wasted words, perfect coordination. Their tactics made no sense by council doctrine. They split up instead of staying together. They advanced into superior numbers instead of establishing defensive positions. They prioritized offensive action over personal survival. And it worked. The Vorash deployed their heavy assault caste, creatures that had terrorized council forces for generations. 4-meter-tall monsters with enough strength to tear through armored vehicles. 6 of them emerged from underground tunnels and charged the human positions. Shadow Team regrouped instantly. 6 operators formed a defensive line. While the other 6 went on offense, the defensive operators engaged the heavy assault Vorash with weapons that seemed designed specifically for this purpose. Explosive rounds targeted joints. Energy weapons burned through thick armor plates. The offensive team flanked and struck from behind. 12 minutes after the heavy assault Vorash appeared, all 6 lay dead. Quillen watched the chronometer. 47 minutes since the pods landed. The Vorash assault had completely collapsed. Survivors were retreating. Human operators were securing the colony perimeter and coordinating with local forces. Hayes received an update on her communicator. Colony secure. Civilian casualties held to 17 injured, none fatal. Shadow Team reports mission accomplished. The operations center had gone completely silent. Every delegate, every military coordinator, Every species representative stared at the screens, showing 12 human figures standing amid the wreckage of a Vorash assault force. The Virin delegate finally spoke. How many Vorash did they kill? Hayes checked her datapad. Preliminary count is 247 enemy combatants eliminated. Exact numbers pending final sweep. 12 humans killed 247 Vorash warriors in under an hour. The delegate's voice was barely a whisper. Shadow Team is mid-tier, Hayes added casually. We have other units. The emergency council session convened 8 hours after Shadow Team's operation. Representatives from every major species gathered in the primary chamber. The mood ranged from fear to calculation. Everyone had watched the footage. Everyone understood the implications. Humanity possessed military capabilities that exceeded anything the galaxy had encountered. Quillen took his position at the central podium. His analysis was complete. The numbers were worse than anyone had anticipated. Council members, I've compiled comprehensive data on the Shadow Team operation. 12 human soldiers neutralized a Vorash assault force that would typically require a battalion of our forces to defeat. Their casualty ratio was approximately 20-1. Their mission time was 47 minutes. By comparison, our last engagement against similar Vorash numbers lasted 6 hours and resulted in significant friendly casualties. The chamber erupted in multiple conversations. Species representatives debated among themselves. Some demanded restrictions on human military presence. Others argued for immediate alliance. The Krillian ambassador stood, his scaled features twisted in anger. This proves humans are a threat. They've been hiding their true capabilities. They send civilians into our space while maintaining secret warrior castes. The Council must act to contain them before they decide to use that power against us. Ambassador Roberts entered the chamber with Colonel Hayes and another human, an older male in a different uniform. This new arrival carried himself with quiet authority. His gray hair and weathered face suggested decades of experience. Roberts stepped forward to address the Council. Council members, this is General Park from Earth's Joint Special Operations Command. He's agreed to brief you on human military structure. But I must warn you, you asked for honesty. You'll receive it. Don't mistake our transparency for weakness. We're sharing this information as a gesture of goodwill, not because we fear you. Park moved to the podium. He spoke without notes, his voice calm and measured. I understand you have questions about human military capabilities. I'll answer what I can. Earth's total military forces number approximately 15 million active personnel. Our special operations community represents roughly 1% of that number. These are the soldiers you've designated as elite forces. The Virin delegate interrupted. 1%, that means 150,000 of these super soldiers. No, Park corrected. Approximately 150,000 special operations personnel across all services and specializations. Not all special operations units are combat-focused. Many handle intelligence, training, or support functions. The number of direct action operators like Shadow Team is considerably smaller. Quillen leaned forward. How are these operators selected? They volunteer from regular military forces after serving several years. Candidates must meet stringent physical and mental requirements before selection. The training process eliminates 70 to 80% of volunteers. Those who fail aren't weak by galactic standards. They're humans who were already trained soldiers but couldn't meet special operations standards. The implications settled over the chamber like a physical weight. Park was describing a selection process that rejected the majority of candidates who were already more capable than most galactic military forces. What makes them different? The Eldari counselor asked. What separates special operations from regular forces? Park considered the question. Specialization. Regular forces train for conventional warfare. Special operations units train for unconventional scenarios. We have maritime specialists who operate in Earth's oceans, environments with pressure that would crush most species. Mountain and Arctic specialists trained in temperatures that cause rapid death without protection. Desert and jungle experts who thrive in conditions others consider uninhabitable. Counterterrorism, units that practice hostage rescue thousands of times. Reconnaissance teams that remain undetected in hostile territory for months at a time. You're describing environmental specialists, the VRIN delegate observed. How does that translate to combat effectiveness? Because Earth is a death world, Park stated simply. Our planet has killed more humans than any war in our history. We evolved surviving predators, diseases, temperature extremes, natural disasters, and resource scarcity. Our special operations training deliberately recreates Earth's most hostile environments. We deprive candidates of sleep, food, expose them to temperature extremes, push them beyond normal physical limits. The training simulates our homeworld's dangers. Quillen felt understanding dawn. Humans weren't just trained warriors. They were survivors shaped by a planet that tried to kill them daily. Park continued. Our operators train to function under impossible stress. They make life and death decisions while exhausted, injured, and outnumbered. The goal isn't creating fearless soldiers. Fear is natural and useful. We create soldiers who function despite fear, who adapt when plans fail, who complete missions even when survival seems unlikely. What are your most elite units capable of? The Krillian ambassador demanded. Park's expression became unreadable. I cannot answer that. Cannot or will not? Both, Park replied. Some capabilities are classified for operational security. Others I genuinely don't know. The highest tier units operate with significant autonomy. Even I lack full oversight of certain programs. He paused. I can tell you that units exist with designations like Ghost Company and Titan Program. They recruit from Special Operations Forces the way Special Operations. Recruits from regular military. They operate in scenarios we hope never become necessary. The chamber fell silent. Park had just admitted that somewhere in human military structure existed soldiers who made Shadow Team look ordinary. The Krillian ambassador stood abruptly. This entire presentation is designed to intimidate. You're trying to frighten the Council into submission. Humans are primitives playing at warfare. Your species has been in space for barely 2 centuries while we've conducted military operations for millennia. Park turned to face the Krillian. His voice remained level, almost gentle. Ambassador, I've spent 30 years in special operations. I've trained with the people you just dismissed. Those operators saved your colony on Threshold Station last year. The pirate raid you reported that killed 43 Krillian civilians, that was prevented by Shadow Team. The Krillian's scales paled to a lighter shade. That raid was never made public. How do you know about it? Because my people stopped it, Park explained calmly. They were on vacation visiting the station for personal reasons. When the pirates attacked, they intervened. They eliminated 17 raiders, secured all hostages, and prevented the station breach that would have killed everyone aboard. They didn't report it through official channels because they didn't consider it worth mentioning. Stopping pirates isn't special operations work. It's just something that needed doing. Quillen accessed his secure files. He'd wondered about the Threshold incident. The official report claimed Krillian security forces had defeated the attack, but the details had never added up. Now he understood why. You're saying your elite soldiers intervene in crises during their personal time? The Eldari counselor asked. Sometimes, Park acknowledged. Our operators are trained to recognize threats and respond appropriately. That training doesn't turn off during leave. If they see civilians in danger and have capability to help, most will act. It's not about glory or recognition. It's about duty. The Krillian ambassador sat down heavily. His earlier bluster had evaporated. Park looked around the chamber, meeting the gaze of each delegate. If you want a demonstration of what humans can do when we're actually trying, I can arrange that. But I don't think anyone in this room wants to see it. What you saw with Shadow Team was a routine. Operation, mid-tier unit, standard deployment. We have capabilities beyond that. Capabilities we'd prefer to never use. capabilities that exist because Earth taught us the universe is dangerous and preparation is survival. He stepped back from the podium. We're here offering friendship and cooperation. We'll share training methods, tactical knowledge, and defensive technology. But understand this, humans will not be restricted or controlled. We've walked too far through fire to fear political pressure. Work with us or work around us, but don't make the mistake of working against us. The session ended in silence. No votes were taken, no decisions made. The delegates simply filed out, each processing what they'd learned. Quillen remained behind, watching the humans depart. Park had delivered his message perfectly, not a threat, just a statement of fact. And somehow that was more terrifying than any ultimatum could have been. 3 months passed since General Park's briefing. The Council had established joint training programs with human forces. Quillen observed the changes spreading throughout galactic military culture. Species that had maintained the same tactical doctrines for centuries were suddenly adopting human methods. The transformation was remarkable but also concerning. He'd been conducting his own investigation, and the results kept him awake during rest cycles. He stood in his private office reviewing incident reports. The pattern was undeniable. Across Council space, dozens of crises had been resolved by unidentified humans appearing, handling the situation, and disappearing without requesting payment or recognition. A merchant station fire contained by a human trader who used to work in emergency response. A pirate blockade broken by 3 humans in a cargo ship who knew a few tricks. A medical emergency on a passenger liner managed by a human volunteer with some field experience. Quillen had interviewed many of these individuals. The merchant with emergency response experience turned out to be former combat engineering. The cargo ship operators included 2 ex-infantry and 1 former Navy technician. The medical volunteer had served as a combat medic. Every interview revealed the same pattern: humans with military backgrounds living as civilians throughout Council territory. He compiled the data and requested a private meeting with Ambassador Roberts. They met in a secured conference room away from official channels. Roberts arrived alone, carrying a datapad and looking mildly curious. Ambassador Quillen, your message mentioned sensitive information. Quillen activated a holographic display. I've been tracking incidents involving human civilians. In the past 3 months, I've documented 47 crisis responses where humans intervened successfully. In each case, those humans possessed military training they didn't advertise. He pulled up profiles. Why are so many of your former soldiers living as civilians among us? Roberts smiled slightly. Because that's what humans do. Military service is common on Earth. It's considered a civic duty by many. Most serve for a few years, learn valuable skills, then return to civilian life. They become teachers, doctors, traders, engineers, parents. They carry their training with them, but they're not soldiers anymore. They're people who happen to serve. But they still respond to threats. Of course, Roberts replied. Training doesn't vanish when you change careers. If someone has the capability to help during a crisis, many humans feel obligated to act. It's not about being soldiers. It's about being responsible members of a community. Quillen felt his understanding shift. You don't separate military from civilian the way other species do. Not entirely, Roberts admitted. We maintain clear legal and organizational distinctions. Our military has formal structure, chain of command, and operational authority that civilians don't possess. But culturally, we believe everyone should be capable of protecting themselves and others. Competence isn't reserved for specialists. The holographic display shifted to population statistics. Earth's population exceeds 8 billion. Even if only 1% have military training, that's 80 million individuals with combat experience. How many of them are living in Council space? Roberts checked his datapad. Approximately 200,000 humans currently reside outside Earth's solar system. I don't have exact figures on military backgrounds, but your estimate of 1% is probably low. Voluntary service rates are higher among the population that chooses to leave Earth. Quillen sat down heavily. 200,000 humans, many with military training, scattered across the galaxy, each one potentially capable of civilian-level responses that exceeded trained. Galactic soldiers, and that wasn't counting Earth's actual military forces. "The Council is afraid," he said quietly. "Not of your soldiers, of your people. We can negotiate with governments, establish treaties with militaries, but how do we account for individuals who act independently?" "You don't," Roberts replied simply. "You accept that humans will respond to situations as we see fit. Most of the time that means helping. Occasionally it means defending. Rarely it means fighting. But we won't stop being who we are to make others comfortable." An alarm interrupted their conversation. Red lights flashed throughout the facility. Quillen's communicator erupted with emergency signals. He accessed the tactical display. 3 Council worlds were under simultaneous attack by Vorash swarm forces. The coordination suggested a major offensive. "This is catastrophic," Quillen stated. "Council forces are spread too thin. We can maybe defend 2 worlds adequately. The third will fall before reinforcements arrive." Roberts was already on his communicator. The conversation lasted 30 seconds. He turned back to Quillen. "Earth is deploying forces to 2 worlds. Regular military units will handle those situations." "And the third world?" Quillen demanded. "The one with the heaviest attack?" "That's receiving specialized attention," Roberts replied. "General Park is sending a unit called Warhammer Team." Within 2 hours, reports began arriving from the first 2 worlds. Human regular forces had established defensive positions and were coordinating with Council militaries. The fighting was intense but organized. Casualties were being minimized. It was professional military action at its finest. The third world told a different story. Warhammer Team arrived in a ship that looked more like a weapon than a transport. 8 operators inserted directly into the heaviest combat zone. They didn't coordinate with local forces. They didn't establish defensive perimeters. They went straight for the Vorash command structure. Quillen watched the tactical feeds with growing disbelief. These 8 moved like nothing he'd seen before. Shadow Team had been impressive. Warhammer Team was beyond classification. They used weapons that seemed decades ahead of known technology. Their armor incorporated systems that Council scientists were still theorizing about. Their tactics combined aggression and precision in ways that defied conventional analysis. 2 hours after insertion, the Vorash command structure was eliminated. Supply lines were cut. Remaining forces were scattered and retreating. Total Vorash casualties exceeded 400. Warhammer Team reported 0 injuries. Quillen received a message from General Park. It was brief and informal. "Warhammer is available for joint operations if Council is interested. Consider this a demonstration of partnership potential." He showed the message to Roberts. "What is Warhammer Team?" "Exactly what you think," Roberts replied. "Top-tier special operations, recruited from units like Shadow Team. They handle scenarios that require absolute certainty of success." "How many teams like that does Earth have?" Roberts smiled. "Enough." He stood to leave, then paused. "Ambassador, the Council spent months fearing our elite forces. You should have been paying attention to everyone else. Our operators are extraordinary, yes, but our strength isn't in specialized units. It's in a population that believes competence and responsibility are universal values. Every human ship, every human station, every human settlement represents potential that other species reserve for military installations." After Roberts departed, Quillen remained in the conference room. He pulled up statistics on human expansion. New colonies were being established in contested regions. Human traders were opening routes through dangerous space. Human civilians were accepting positions throughout Council territory. A notification appeared. The Krillian Empire had lodged a complaint about human presence in their border regions. Quillen almost laughed. The Krillians still didn't understand. They were worried about borders and territories while humans were quietly becoming ubiquitous. He composed a response to the Council. His recommendation was simple: accept humanity as full partners. Attempting to control or restrict them was both impossible and counterproductive. Instead, the Council should learn from human methods, adapt their training to human standards, and recognize that the galaxy had fundamentally changed. One species had arrived in space with capabilities forged by a death world that tried to kill them daily. They'd taken those capabilities and turned them into culture, into values, into a way of life. They didn't separate warriors from citizens because they believed everyone should be capable. The Council had labeled some humans elite forces and feared them. They'd missed the real revelation. There were no ordinary humans.